This is the Self Storage Podcast, where we share the knowledge and skills from the industry's leading investors, developers, and operators to help you launch and grow your self-storage business. I'm your host, Scott Meyers, and over the past 16 years, we have acquired, developed, converted, and syndicated over 2 million square feet of self-storage nationwide with the help of my incredible team at selfstorageinvesting.com, who has helped thousands of people achieve greatness in self-storage. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Self Storage Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Meyers. This week's podcast is another in our Platform for Change segments, which, simply put, these segments come together by collaborating with my team members who are able to educate me, as I do millions in the self-storage investing space, on understanding the lens of the Black community and their everyday experience. Our own business that has grown through education, understanding, and partnership with a diverse array of wonderful individuals. And these podcast segments will be a way to continue the conversations as our way of saying the lens and understanding need to become a shared experience in order to be the change we want to see. So today's guest, Alex Braun, is first and foremost a family man, and he resides in the San Francisco Bay Area after growing up in Oakland. Alex has an MBA in marketing, a bachelor's degree in accounting, and has been in the self-storage industry for over 18 years, managing, developing, and operating startups and existing self-storage facilities. He specializes in sales and marketing, employee development, and Alex started his career by working at a local self-storage facility and then worked his way up to ownership with his partners and then beyond. Alex also provides business consulting and development services through Braun Financial, and he is one of our esteemed mentors that coaches our students on how to successfully manage their self-storage facilities once they purchase them. Alex has also recently added a portable storage franchise to his holdings and is the director of operations in a development company with his partner. So without further ado, please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with Alex Braun. Hey, Alex, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. I'm really excited to be part of this podcast, and I like this platform that you created. So I'm really got to be a part of this.
Well, it's good to see you again, and a little bit of a bummer that we're not able to see each other at the mastermind, and hopefully that will come to an end soon with the moratorium on travel, and we'll be able to get back together again in a room, because I miss you and Brian, brother.
Hey, that was one of the things we really miss, is being able to really network and connect with you guys, and having that interaction has been a really good and positive, has really affected us in a positive way, and so we're looking forward to continuing that on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, it'll happen soon. Well, listen, what I wanted to do is I gave everybody your bio on the front end, but wanted to talk with you a little bit about, well, first of all, let's get into your background. How did you get into self-storage to begin with?
Well, I have kind of an interesting story on how I got into storage. It was kind of on a fluke. This was about 18, 19 years ago. I was a couple of years into college, starting working on my bachelor's degree. But I was also living on my own. I was working a lot of full-time jobs to try to pay rent and live. And I was advised by my mother, who was saying, hey, you need to concentrate on school to finish this degree. And it seems like your concentration is on work and paying rent. Maybe you should try to find a job where you don't have to worry about rent and don't have to worry about bills. And she suggested, maybe you want to be an apartment manager or self-storage. And I thought about it and said, self-storage, what is that? I wasn't quite sure. I've never used storage before. And I said, isn't that like two old people sitting in the office? Like, what is self-storage? And so back then, when you went to go look for a job, you go look in the newspaper. So I went to the library, and at the library, they have these big, long wooden poles with the newspaper for everybody to look at. And I found a position for at a self-storage facility in San Leandro. I'm from the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area in California. San Leandro is next to Oakland. And that's kind of where it all started. I applied for the position, had a couple of interviews. They liked I had some sales background. They were transitioning from the old way of doing storage, which was basically two old people sitting in the office collecting rent, to more of a sales-oriented, and it was more of a competitive market. So it provided an opportunity for me to get into something that I didn't quite know about. And it opened a whole new world for me. And it was a small mom and pop operation, a family run business. And I was able to grow with the business as it grew. And so as it went from one facility, which they had at that time, and they had a few multi-family apartment complexes, and it grew to multiple facilities, I was able to expand within the company, whether it was from, just a regular worker to an assistant manager to a manager to a startup manager at a new ground up operation to general manager. And director of operations, and even up to the ownership part of the business. And so I was able to grow and evolve with the business as it grew. And it created a great opportunity for me, but it also kind of brought me into a world that was not the world I thought I was going to get into. And it also allowed me to finish my bachelor's degree and even go back to school and finish my master's degree as well. And so it's helped me grow on a professional and a personal level.
I wasn't aware that you had a master's degree, Alex. You never told me that. What's your master's in?
Marketing management.
Is that right? Oh, good for you. Good for you. Well, I know that you've been just doing an incredible job at the multiple facilities that you're overseeing. Tell me, let's talk a little bit about the day-to-day. You operate out of a facility, but you're overseeing multiple. What does that look like in terms of a regional supervisor position, and how are, maybe get into then also some of the changes and the way that you're able to manage those facilities remotely now in the middle of this pandemic that we find ourselves in?
So right now we have a portfolio of about 4 facilities. On the large side, one is 1,000 units. The other one is, we just expanded to 850 units. Another one, and that's about 450 that we acquired a few years ago. And then the portable storage business. And so between, let's see, we're in Napa, California. We're in San Leandro, which is next to San Francisco. We're also in the Central Valley of California, which is Manteca, which was one of our ground up operations. And then lately we've incorporated portable storage into our portfolio. And we have about 600 containers with our portable storage business in Livermore, which is in the Bay Area also. And, coming from the ground up and understanding every level of storage from the bottom to the top, it has given me a certain skill set on how to handle and develop and expand upon our portfolio. And then it's really taught me a lot about employee dynamics and how we deal with training, marketing, and taking a new market and having success stories and entering new markets. But dealing with today's environment, we've really had to adjust and change how we do business. Before, it was a lot of site visits, training, phone training, in-person training, and now we're more into Zoom calls and conference calls, and really touching bases with them on a more of a regular basis. We have weekly meetings, weekly manager meetings, where we're really trying to be proactive rather than reactive, because it can be a lot more efficient if you're proactive and staying ahead of things, especially with the environment now that's changing on a regular basis. Especially in Northern California, where we were one of the first to do the shelter in place. We were one of the first to have restrictions. We had our issues with protests and looting, and I don't necessarily want to call them riots, because it didn't really have that in the areas where we have storage facilities, but it is happening in our market, and how do we handle these things? And then just the different dynamic that's happening right now with more awareness and with more information out there of what's really going on in our communities.
Well, Alex, that's one of the things that I want to chat with you about. In our ongoing series, in looking at the conversation that's going on right now surrounding race and the culture that we find ourselves in. In the 18 years that you've been in self storage, tell us a little bit about your journey, and what are the instances that you may have seen or personally experienced as a result of your 18 years in this business, and primarily mostly an all-white culture of self-storage.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen a big evolution. When I first got into the storage industry, I'll bring up a term that my grandmother used to tell me, because she's from the South. She's from Louisiana and Texas, and she was part of the great migration of African Americans to California during World War II to work in the shipyards. And she got to see some of the new experiences I was being exposed to. And she said, how does it feel to be the fly in the buttermilk? Which is a term that she said. It's kind of a Southern term. Mm-hmm. And at that moment, I didn't quite understand it, but I started to understand what she was saying, because as I've been going to the ISS conferences and SSA conferences for the past 18 years. And I've seen, in the beginning, I was one of very few I could count them on my hands, and I'm amongst thousands of people, and I've seen an evolution and you know, things becoming more diverse. But in the beginning, it wasn't that diverse. The storage and the storage industry, and as I grew into the storage industry and learned about it and started expressing these things to other people in my community, they were like, they didn't know that it was $1 billion industry, and they didn't understand the business concept of it, and um, the low overhead, and the how it has one of the lowest default rates in regards to asset classes, and the profits to be made, and the business. It's a much easier business to run than, say, some other businesses that are usually within African American communities, and so being able to kind of open that horizon, open people's eyes, but also my eyes were opened as well, and I had different experiences. Um, when we started a facility in the Central Valley, in Manteca, we doing a ground up. It's a different climate, say, in the Central Valley. Even though California is thought to be a liberal state, uh, in actuality, most of California is actually very conservative. It's the liberal areas are more in the Bay Area or LA, and that's where the population is. But most of the state has a different atmosphere. And so entering, say, the market that we went into in the Central Valley, we had to take certain things in mind. What kind of reception we would get when some of these cities had, we'll call it good old boy network, and what does that mean in regards to hiring? What did that mean in regards to customer standpoint? How will we be received in regards to going to the city and getting certain permits? And they see whether it's a black man, and at that time a young black man, what are those certain preconceived notions and those certain ideas that they've had? How will that affect us doing business and us being efficient? And I've had certain circumstances to where I've had to let somebody go at that facility, and they decided to use racial slurs at me because they didn't want to be let go and thought they could uh, incite me with those type of things, because they had a certain stereotype in mind that you know um, I would resort to violence if I was incited, and being able to deal with those stereotypes and deal with those situations has made me become a more well-rounded and more efficient operator, and I'm aware of certain things because iron sharpens iron, and it helps me develop an extra skill set and helps me broaden my horizons, but not only teach other people to get into this market so it becomes more diverse. And so people get to see a different side of different communities and different races and different cultures within the self-storage community, to offset some of these stereotypes and offset some of these preconceived notions just based on not having experience with other cultures. And so it's definitely been great to see some evolution and some diversity coming into the self-storage market, because it's going to help everybody. There's a lot of investors, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of good business-minded people in different cultures and in different communities. As the self-storage becomes more diverse, they're going to become that much better, incorporating and having that inclusion, and then just having that experience and that knowledge.
But we're several weeks on now after the public murder of George Floyd, and this has been a catalyst for lots of conversations and already a lot of change that we've seen. My hope is that the conversation continues, which is one of the reasons why we're performing this podcast series. But then also that this will take us to another level. Because of what happened was so public and so heinous that it would cause people to look at it differently. That we get to a certain level and we continue on from there. So, what have you seen, either personally or in your market that has gone up to a certain level that you think has been a great change, and then where do you want to see it go from here? What is that change that you hope sustains and goes forward from this point?
What I'm seeing and what's very encouraging to me is the willingness for others to understand that maybe there's more to be known, and that more awareness. Before these type of things with George Floyd and a lot of the other people who have been senselessly murdered within certain communities is honestly nothing new. It's things that's been happening for years, decades, and you could almost say centuries. But now there's this awareness of others who haven't quite experienced it that's now opening things up, and people are more willing to educate themselves on what is actually happening. And that's where we can get some true change within our systems. Systemic racism does exist, and racism does exist, and that's why we're having the environment that we have right now. Is now there's more awareness, and with that awareness becomes openness. Then the next part of it is education, and understanding other people's point of views, other people's experiences, and being open to that. And people learn from their experiences, but sometimes experiences can be limited. And being able to be open to hear other people's experiences then creates enlightenment. And with that enlightenment comes understanding. And with that understanding, we can then start working toward change. And at one point, only a certain subsegment of the community was seeing these things, while now this is being exposed to the entire community, even on a worldwide basis. I mean, there's protests in other countries for what is happening here, to just let people know that this is happening and we need some real change. And that's what's great about this platform that we're doing at this with the self-storage investing and this platform for change, is it's helping create that awareness. And that's the beginning of trying to get some change, because without the support of other communities, we'll never get change. That's how we got change in the civil rights movement, is the support of other communities, and having help other communities get that awareness is a step toward the right direction. And so that's what's really encouraging to me. The next step is, with that awareness, what are we going to do with it? Where are we going to take that? How do we now take that collective camaraderie and take togetherness, and then as a collective go to the people who actually is involved with the systems to make some true systematic change, to then have a society that's inclusive of everybody and get everybody on a level playing field.
Well, and this has been extremely enlightening for me as we've continued to go through not only this podcast series, but just as I continue to dig in, just to realize, how ignorant I was as to this systemic side of this, and how you can't really have equality if you have a system that's set up to combat that and make it anything but. And as much as I think myself and others wanted to fool themselves into thinking that everybody has an equal opportunity, there's certainly not the case. And until you dig in, you don't really realize what that looks like. So I too, we will do our part, and I too hope that this will continue, that the conversation will continue, and that the awareness will be heightened, and it won't just go away, but that we truly do make some changes. You mentioned it's one thing to have the awareness of it, and that perhaps there's education and some of the ignorance goes away, but it's another thing to execute upon it, to level the playing field and continue the conversation after that. And so time will tell, but boy, it is far time. It is far time.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the things where history keeps repeating itself, because the education is not there. And when you don't understand the history to its entirety, you're bound to repeat it. And that's the kind of the vicious cycle that we've been in. And that's why, this is a story that keeps repeating itself over the last few decades.
Yeah, well, education is also an enlightenment in this case as well. So let's turn back to storage now. So we're, as at the time that this podcast is coming out, we're going to be around mid-August, and we may be we're already seeing a little bit of a round two of this pandemic. So give us a little insight as to what you're doing to prepare for not only, what we're dealing with right now with the pandemic, but then also the recession. And then where's your crystal ball? Where do you see taking the business as we navigate through the recession and then out?
So that's definitely a really good topic, and very relevant to right now, because we've gotten through a difficult period, say the shock of the COVID situation. And that had an effect on business, say mid-March for us in the Bay Area, but maybe a little later for others. And April and May, we definitely hit some down trends that were unexpected, especially when those times was usually when we're ramping up into our peak season. And so now we've regrouped and we're looking at, is it going to be a compressed peak season or an elongated peak season? And those are two different strategies on how to handle either one. Right now, we're seeing a big spike of pent-up demand coming to the self-storage, our self-storage, and especially our portable storage business, because those who were holding back are now taking advantage of this scenario of, I won't call it freedom, but not being in shelter in place to handle what they need to handle on top of the people who already had demand at this time. And so we're seeing a big influx of business. What was really surprising to me though, is I thought our delinquencies were going to shoot up based on people not having income. And honestly, our delinquencies have held very stable, and we strategically went after our delinquencies and we've actually been able to get it down, surprisingly, and still need to prepare for what's to come. Right now, we're in what's called a capture mode. We want to capture as many customers as possible because we don't know what may happen in the future that will hinder customers from coming our direction. So we're doing a full court press in regards to our marketing efforts, in regards to our advertising efforts, in regards to our salesmanship, in regards to our specials and concessions, so we can capture as many customers to then have them as a base, as if things do slow down, we now have a base of customers to reside on that income throughout a possible recession or inevitable recession, but another wave. What we're seeing right now is a push of people downsizing, a push of people losing their jobs, they're moving, they need storage. And so we want to capture all of that at this moment. And we've seen some great numbers in regards to rentals, in regards to customer acquisition. And we've seen that amplified in the portable storage side of the business, because the reason we got into the portable side of the business is we've seen an evolution of storage. At one time, portable storage was thought to be an industry disruptor. And that has kind of changed. Now it's actually a part of storage evolution and our thought process. And the reason why we say that is in the last 10, but I'd say 5 years, there's been this transition of people wanting an on-demand product. Things that normally you would not have on demand to you are now to you. So for example, 5 years ago, I wouldn't think McDonald's would be delivered to my door. 5 years ago, I didn't think that a car, if I wanted to buy a car, I could go on my phone, go on Carvana or whatever other app, and a truck shows up and delivers the car to me. And if you're looking at the customer base that's growing, they're infused in this type of environment. Generation Z and the millennials, their tech is ingrained into what they do. So soon, 5 years from now, that's going to be an expectation, And so when we decided to get into the portable storage industry, we're like, okay, are we positioning ourselves for growth 5-10 years from now? And are we positioning ourselves to see where storage is going to evolve? Not just storage, just everything in general. Everything in general now is you look at your phone and whatever you want, it comes to you, whether it's Amazon and or whatever other platforms that are out there. And with this COVID situation, that now becomes accelerated. People, because they want to be safe, because they don't know what's going on, they want that access. And so we've seen our portable storage side of the business really move up in these last the last month or so, because people want the storage to them. They want to be safe. They're stuck at home. Their storage is now where they are. And not saying self-storage is going anywhere. Self-storage is here to stay, but we want to be diversified in our portfolio and be able to capture the new customer and the old customer. And as we look into the future, that new customer who wants storage coming to them is going to do nothing but grow and grow.
Yeah, we are becoming a society more and more, not becoming, we have become a society that we want instant gratification. We want it now. We want everything shown up, and we want our steak to arrive all cut up in bite-sized pieces for us, as a matter of fact. And so we are changing in the industries that can evolve and that can accommodate that are the ones that are going to win in the end. So I, as you know, am a big fan of that business model, and just cheering you guys on to see how you're going to do on the portable side. And I'd love to hear about your successes on that. And we'll continue to see what that looks like in the future. But you guys are poised to do very, very well with that. So with that, Alex, once again, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Everybody's going 100 miles an hour in this industry right now, including yourself. But if you would, in the time that we have left here in the next few minutes, why don't you talk about perhaps some success quotes and or some good books that you've read that you'd like to leave our folks with that have made an impact on you?
Sure. Let's see. Of course, one of the books that's in my library, actually sitting on my desk right now. I mean, Rich Dad Poor Dad is always one of those staples, and Think and Grow Rich. Mm-hmm. And then there's a few others. I'm looking at right now. There's one called The Goal, The Flaw of Averages, the 80-20 principle, and leadership and self-deception. That one has been a good one for me as well. But then also just keeping up on times and making sure I'm educating myself as I navigate through today's environment and different social issues that come up today. I want to make sure that I keep myself versed and educated. And so there are other books that I read, such as The New Jim Crow, or other books that have to do with social injustices that are happening, mm-hmm. to make sure that I'm well-rounded in my thought process. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the way to not only make an impact, but obviously to combat the ignorance out there, and to have that conversation, for the person on the other end that needs to know, what the true facts are. And if they can't get it from you, then they're going to get it from the wrong places, which typically is the media or somebody else's opinion, which is once again coming out of ignorance, or even from a culture of bigotry or worse. So, if you want to have a discussion about religion, you need to bone up on religion, and not just the one that you belong to, but others as well. And that goes for race, that goes for all those other social issues. So that is, once again, how we have an impact. And if it's the way we want to be able to get people to do and to say and act in the right way and to do the right thing, we have to come at it from an educated standpoint. So I applaud you for that and agree 100%.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And it's all about growth and development,
yes, it is.
And understanding and understanding other people's point of view, understanding other people's experiences. And that's how we grow on a self standpoint through other people, and having these platforms and having this discussion and having this dialogue creates enlightenment. And hopefully it creates more enlightenment within the self-storage and the portable storage community to then have better understanding and more inclusiveness, and understanding that, we all can help each other be successful and take this industry to a whole nother level.
Yeah. Well, Alex, I'm a big fan, and just really appreciate everything that you're doing for the industry, for the job that you're doing, for helping out our students, your contributions to the mastermind and at the mastermind. And man, it's good to see you, because I can't wait till we all get back together in the same room again. And just appreciate you taking time out once again of your busy schedule day to share your insights and your background and your involvement in self-storage, as well as your viewpoints on what's going on out there right now. So just appreciate you, and thanks so much for spending time with us today, Alex.
Hey, I'm glad to be a part of it, and I'm glad to help be a part of instituting some change and growth for everybody.
All right. Well, thanks, Alex. I'm looking forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care, bud.
All right. Take care. You as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always. Now, we're going to be talking about topics like this that are on target for the times that we find ourselves in. So it is important that you are listening to this podcast every single week because the guests that I'm going to be bringing on and the topics we will be covering are relevant to what we are all going through right now. And it's just going to get better and better and better in terms of the content that we're going to be discussing, and it's going to be more timely than ever. So please, make sure you subscribe to the show and make sure you're paying attention to these episodes as they are coming out during this period, as I am specifically going out and finding guests who are providing really valuable information you need right now. So thank you so much. We'll see you next week.